It's the Boyers Kingdom Marriage Podcast.
We are the Boyers, and this is the Boyers Kingdom Podcast. I'm Stefan Boyer.
And I'm Ashley Boyer.
And today we will be discussing or having a small discussion about marriage, which is what everybody knows that this podcast will be about, right?
Right. Christian marriage, kingdom marriage.
But we want to still keep it live and fresh. We want to talk about how do you actually view marriage? Is it a contract or is it a covenant to you?
To me, it's a covenant.
It's a covenant.
Yeah.
But a lot of people that maybe don't understand what a covenant is, they'll see it as a contract.
Right.
So when you think about a contract is something that you sign. A contract has to do with employment. A contract has to do with setting certain boundaries in place and agreement, right?
Yeah, because I think that's one of the main things that people think about when they even think about getting married. Like, am I going to be, if I don't stay, can I keep my money? Can I keep my house? Like, it's already, when they go in, they're already thinking about if this don't work, what am I going to keep? You know what I'm saying? People go in with that. Right. And it's like, so not the basis or so not the way God intended us to be thinking about marriage.
Right. So a covenant then is a spiritual thing, right? So contracts are closed in with a signature, but a covenant is something that is sealed, right? We understand that a covenant deals with a seal. There has to be an altar. So the man and the woman come and stand in front of an altar, which means that there has to be a sacrifice. When you read in the Bible, Cain and Abel, they had to come and give a sacrifice at an altar to be in the presence of God. That's why it says there needs to be a witness when it comes to marriage. So it's a covenant. There's a death that has to happen. So I can't fully be me in a marriage, and you can't fully be you. There has to be a dying. So the Bible tells us that the two shall become one, and the one joins into a covenant with God. Because he's marrying the marriage, which means he's the head of the marriage.
Right. Yeah, that's good. I think that a lot of times we think about nowadays going into marriage. I think somebody asked us on the live we did the other day about marriage is marriage old-fashioned? And I think that really and truly marriage, just coming from our perspective or people's perspective, it was never really lined out all the way. Like, to really dive into the scriptures and see what he meant by marriage. A lot of things came from tradition and people's roots and what they believe should happen. I don't think the Bible really laid any of that out.
Right. When it comes to tradition. Yeah, tradition can be difficult for some people. And it's not about, when it comes to tradition, it's not about going step by step and keeping up tradition, but understanding the groundwork that was already laid. So that's why in your vows, they'll say for better or for worse. It's laying a groundwork.
Right.
But people tend to, if they have the mindset of the contract, they don't go into for better or for worse. As soon as it's worse, they exit. Almost like if they're dating.
Yeah.
That's stuff that you do when you're dating.
Right.
So there's a lot of red flags that are drawn, but people ignore them because they want to be married so bad. Some people want to get married because they struggle with lust.
Yes, or loneliness.
And that doesn't change when you get married.
That's true.
That's something that you have to build your own altar with God with.
Yeah, you got to be 100% yourself, one whole person.
Right, so that you can cancel that. Just because you entered into the marriage doesn't make it stop.
Yeah,
that's
then you put extra not baggage, but you tend to pull on the spouse more for something that they really can't feel.
Right. So I grew up only child, and my father wasn't there. My mother abandoned. So I grew up wanting closeness, wanting a family.
Yes.
Right. So I pulled on you a lot. I wanted to be around the kids. I didn't mind doing a whole bunch of stuff because I didn't want it to be alone.
Right. And meanwhile, it was opposite for me. I had a family that kept me sheltered. We did a lot of family stuff. And so when I thought when I was going to be grown and get out, I was going to be able to do whatever I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. So it was a little bit overbearing for me.
Right. Yeah. So even with that, when you
Overbearing, overwhelming.
That's
what I meant to say. I didn't mean to say overbearing.
Yeah, because I remember sometimes, and I battled with that because I knew how it made you feel. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, man, I need to slow up because it's pushing you away. Yeah. I wanted to be closer, but it was pushing you away. And a lot of people don't take the time out. We were young, so a lot of people don't take the time out in trying to balance out the two.
Right.
Right. So when you're trying to balance out the two, you just don't want to be selfish.
Yeah. Because then I had to try to explain to you, like, it doesn't mean that I don't want to be around you or that I don't love you. I don't need all of that. And so then that was where we had to come in and try to find that compromise so that it wouldn't be I feel like you smothering me, but then you feel like you still lonely.
Right. So to keep a good, healthy marriage, you have to keep that fear of God. Mm-hmm. Keep that fear of God in your marriage, and the cheating or the moving around behind one another's back. You then realize that if I'm married to God, then I'm not cheating on you because we're one. Yeah. So when I cheat, I'm cheating against God.
Yeah.
So with understanding that between one another, a good biblical reference, because it's His kingdom, we want to keep it kingdom.
That's right.
Would be Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians chapter 5, when you get down to about the 21 verse, all the way to the end, which is about 33, it starts breaking down being submissive. Yes. Submitting oneself. And a lot of people don't understand what being submissive really means.
Yeah, they hear that word and they like,
Yeah, no, I'm not doing that. I got my own thing. I know my own way. I done made it this far. I can do things on my own. Yeah. But being submissive is how the Bible breaks it down. Follow me as I follow Christ. Right. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're always going to agree on things.
Absolutely.
Right. So God will place the man or the husband in place to help lead, but He'll give the woman more discernment than the man. Because a man is always up front going forward, but you never want to go too far without speaking with the wife. So it's about being on one accord.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
Being on one accord really helps things flow.
Yes.
Right? I can feel strongly for something and you can feel strongly for something, but we'll come together and say, hey, what do you think? Yeah. That's submitting. Yeah. That's submitting.
And you have to have a mature mindset anyway. Right. I mean, of course, if you're getting married, you should be mature, but it's a mature mindset that you need to even be able to think that way. Because I think a lot of people, like you said, when we talk spiritual versus carnal, it's a spiritual thing. Like, we on the same team. You know, we got the same goal. Nobody trying to one-up somebody. Nobody trying to be in charge or nothing like that. It's just being, on one accord.
Right. You have Abraham and Sarah. Mm-hmm. Abraham heard the promise from God. And I'm referencing this as in a marriage, or those that want to be married. He heard from God. He felt like the promised child was on the way. So sometimes God, He'll speak to someone that's single and they'll want to be married so bad. Yeah. And they know that they're going on the right path, but things might be moving slow. So they'll try to go a few steps ahead
Yeah.
and marry Ishmael. In this tense, Abraham had Ishmael and thought that this was the promised child. So you'll think that this one that you're dating, and then all of a sudden they'll start showing some things. But you'll put up with it because this is who you want to be.
Think that you think God is saying this your husband.
You thinking God is saying this is Isaac, and this is really Ishmael.
That's deep.
So before he can even continue with you, he'll tell you, hey, you need to send Ishmael away. You got to let it go.
Yeah.
God didn't force him. He says, no, you got to let it go. Matter of fact, he made Abraham submit to Sarah and say, listen to Sarah. Listen to what your wife is saying. Be obedient to her. Let this one go. And boom, Isaac is presented. Isaac is born. Isaac is the one. That marriage is the one.
Yeah.
So the Bible says, he that finds a wife. Because Abraham wasn't letting God.
Yeah.
He went forth. He went first.
He was going to try to get it himself.
So a lot of women, and I'm not just going after women, but I'm trying to help women and their husband. You're not supposed to go find them. He's supposed to find you. Because then God gives you the discernment of this is the one or not. This is how he builds that discernment. You build a trust. You build your relationship with God.
With God, not with that person.
Right.
Yeah. Instead of going in and dating and then everything looks good.
Right.
So do you think that we have the tendency as women to, or men, to, if we think that it looks like this is what God is telling us to go forward with, or this is the person that God might have for me, do you think that we have the tendency to ruin it moving too fast or in time, or what do you think?
Well, because the first thing that needs to be established is if you're a sheep, you have to hear God's voice.
That's right.
Because he's going to speak to you.
He'll tell you. Yeah.
Right. So think about what he tells Adam. He says, I'm going to bring you a wife, a Esau, a helper. And Adam is so hyped. He's like, okay, cool. But the first thing God brings him is animals to teach him discernment.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring you a wife. The first thing he brings him is some hood rats. Some dogs.
Yeah.
Some gold digging possums and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And Adam was able to discern, okay, this isn't it.
This not it. This can't be it, Lord.
But when Eve came, he knew.
Yeah.
God didn't have to say, hey, Adam, this one's Eve. This is the one I was talking about. He knew. His spirit leaped. He says, flesh of my flesh. She's exactly what I need.
Yeah.
She has a womb.
So she can multiply.
Right.
What I can give her.
Right. Because Adam could only add. Adam could only add. But with Eve, he was able to multiply.
Yeah. Yes.
Be fruitful and multiply and replenish. Right. So with us, we have 3 kids. Your marriage changes with kids.
It definitely does.
You have to learn how to balance out your time with your children.
And
Your
with
time
your spouse.
with your spouse. Your time
with God.
with God.
Yeah.
You want to have a healthy balance, especially when God is maybe pulling you in ministry, right? So then you need a healthy balance of that. But covenant. When you read throughout the Bible, there's so many different covenants that were made. You have the covenant with Adam. There's a covenant with Noah. with the flood and the rainbow, what the rainbow actually means.
Right.
Right? You have the covenant with Abraham. So God honors covenants, not contracts. Contracts can be changed. They can be rewritten. They can be retyped up, reprinted, renegotiated. Let's do another five-year deal.
Yeah.
Right? But a covenant, once it's established, and God honors it. He honors it. That altar is actually built, and then he honors that covenant from generation to generation. A covenant is a generational thing. Contract only lasts for so long.
Whatever the papers say, the black and white.
Black and white. So there's loopholes in contracts.
Yeah.
There's certain agreements that have to be done to get this amount of money, like with football. They'll say this is your contract, but then you also
can't do this, and this.
You need to make sure you make the playoffs to receive this.
Yeah.
You got to make sure you have this many touchdowns or passing yards and stuff like that. So contracts can really mess you up. And if you keep your mind focused on that it's a contract, you'll try to find the loopholes.
Yeah, I think that's most of the time what people do it's very sad that that's what marriage has come to. But we live in a time where everybody is about self. Like, what can you do for me? What am I gonna get out of this? And if they don't see what they can get out of it, then it's kind of like they're not gonna go into it. And I'm not saying, you don't, like you said, you have to be connected to God first. But the thing is, when you get with somebody, who they are when you're at the altar is not who they'll be a year later. And so then you still might have to go through some changes with the person, because just because he got a job today don't mean he won't have a job. You know what I'm saying? He might not have a job in a year.
For better or for worse.
Right.
And so, how can I say this? Me and you, we didn't just start off understanding that it was a covenant.
No.
I'm not saying that we saw it as a contract, but we didn't understand the covenant part of it.
Right. We knew biblically we was getting married and we never wanted to divorce, but we didn't understand covenant.
Right.
Right.
So there would be days where we would just be putting up with each other. Just, okay, here come Monday again.
Yeah.
So putting up with each other, and that's what a lot of people, they begin to grow apart because they don't see the change in the person. And that person has changed, and you'll hold them to that first 5-year contract deal.
But most of the time, people haven't sat down either and figured out what those changes will be, because most of the time, people can't quite communicate what it is that they're feeling or what needs to change.
Right.
Or not willing to compromise a change. It's just either my way or the highway. But I think that in those times it was frustrating for us, because everything in us wanted to get it right, but sometimes it seemed like it just wasn't gonna work.
Right, because we were going through different stages in our life. Right, there was certain things that we needed to go through.
Yeah.
Right, there were certain things I needed to deal with. I still needed to deal with things that were going on with my family. And when I say my family, my grandma, uncle, dad, uncle on my mama's side. My mama was still living.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of things to deal with that. So God pieced us together to make us whole.
Yeah.
But yet we both were still whole, trying to be together. And it wasn't working. That's hard.
Yeah.
When two pieces are full, but they should be like this so that they can become. But yet they're like this. So they steady bumping heads.
Right.
And we bumped heads on a lot of things.
Yes.
There were certain things I just didn't agree with. There were certain things that she didn't agree with, but we weren't sitting down talking about them.
No, because like I say, we didn't know how to communicate exactly what it was. Okay, so how do we move from contract to covenant?
I think this will contract to covenant. So even if you're already married and you want things to change, you want things to be better in your marriage, you're trying to save your marriage, you don't want a divorce, you've already put in 10, 12 years, you might already have children, and yet there's this separation that's starting to happen. That's because of things being viewed as a contract. So you want to get it back in covenant. So the main thing that you want to do is reestablish your covenant with God.
Your own personal covenant.
Your own personal covenant. Which means that there has to be an altar that's built. So how do you build an altar? You build an altar in prayer. So your prayer life needs to be stronger or more. Me and you pray together.
Yes.
But I need to make sure that I pray by myself. Right? And that's what will reconnect, because there's certain things that I'm going to pray for and pray over you.
Right.
And pray over our marriage. So the Bible says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and all of his righteousness.
Right.
And everything else will be added unto us. Which would be your marriage, because this is something that I had to learn, and it took years.
Yeah.
I didn't grasp it. I couldn't understand why we would have certain attacks on our marriage. I'm like, I love you with everything. I would get you anything.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't stop the attacks. It
Yeah.
wouldn't stop the enemy from putting a separation in our marriage. Until one day, the Lord helped me to understand what was going on. He said, anything that you put before me, I will separate it. I will destroy it. Anything. And I read in scripture, everybody wants to know what's God's name. A lot of people think that his name is God, but God is actually an office that he sits in. It's not his actual name. So when he talked to Moses, he had to tell Moses, I'm the same God of Abraham, Elohim, right? I'm the same God of Isaac. So if we need God to be a healer, we call him Jehovah Rapha, the God that heals.
Yeah. So
he let me know that his name was jealous. And anything that you put before me, I will remove. So as long as I kept putting you before him, I wasn't spending time with God at all. I knew, or what I thought that I knew of God, but there was no personal
relationship,
intimate.
We
look at intimacy as being sexual, and sexual doesn't mean intimacy. So people get thrown off when they say you need an intimate relationship with God. They be like, how do I do that? Because you're thinking of sex. It's not that.
Right.
Women can understand. A lot of men don't.
Right.
I'm like, Steph, what you mean be intimate with God? He wants some personal time, some quiet time, some alone time.
Yeah, just for him.
Just for him. And when you do that, he'll come over and touch you. He'll touch the kids. The kids are cutting up. It's not always about yelling. Your spouse might not be doing the things that you want them to do. You go in and you pray, because it's always a spiritual thing. Whatever's happening in the natural is because it's already taking place in the spiritual. That's why before the foundation of the earth was laid, Jesus was slain. Before the foundation.
Right.
So you want to go in everything with God, develop more of an intimate relationship, with him. And he will place the things together because he's the one that has his hand over everything.
Yeah.
It's when he removes his hand and pulls it back.
And he done pulled his hand back a few times.
Right. So that's how you can reestablish
the covenant.
Build an altar. Build an altar. You see these rappers and singers, they understand what altars are and stuff. Some of them got them on the front of their CD covers. They building altars and
unto other gods.
Unto other gods.
Yeah.
And God is jealous.
Yeah.
So he'll allow destruction to happen. And that's what kept happening. I wasn't in my rightful position as the husband, as the head. You know, some women, they might pray more than they men.
Right.
And God will bless it. But when that man actually gets in position where he's supposed to be,
then things can change.
Things will change way quicker.
So I think from my perspective, I had to, as a woman, see that change in you and not be jealous of God. Because then I start saying, you know, I remember you coming to me and saying, look, I have to put God first. I can't put you first. And so it was like, it sound good, you know, and I understand, but then I start seeing the changes and you know, pulling back and spending more time with God. And so for me, it was like, okay, Ashley, well, what do you do? So now I have to follow your lead. And I also have to create my time with God.
Yep.
Because sometimes it didn't feel good. But I knew that was my flesh. But spiritually, I knew that it was for the better. And so I had to be able to suppress my flesh to know, Ashley, like, that's not, he don't mean nothing. You know what I'm saying? He doing what he have to do for the family or for your relationship. And not, it's taken away. I had to look at it as it was gonna give to our marriage and not take something away. And not instead of fulfilling what I wanted in the moment.
Right. So to end this, I had to make sure that I was in position. When I step out of position, that's when things fall apart.
Right.
Right. It's not on you. This never was designed to be on the woman. It was always designed to be on the man, the husband. That's why Adam was formed first. So it wasn't when Eve ate the fruit that things fell apart. Then nothing happened. She ate it.
Yeah.
Nothing happened because she was still under the covering of Adam. Because he was still the head.
Yeah.
And Adam was placed in a position where he could clean that up. But the moment Adam ate, then things fell apart. So, as long as the husband and the wife stay in position, everything will flow right. If the husband falls out of position, but the woman stays there, God still honors it. Right? Am I making sense?
Yeah.
And if the woman messes up and the husband is still there, it covers it. But if the woman messes up and the man begins to follow the woman,
yeah,
everything shuts down.
Yeah.
And God will allow you to rebuild that thing over again.
Right.
Over again, over again.
Well, that was good. I think that us making sure that we establish our covenant with God is really key. Just making sure that we do what we're supposed to do unto God. And like I said the last time, you know, I'll take care of our vertical and he'll take care of everything else. We thank y'all for joining us for this time. We can't wait till the next time. We want to make sure that you guys leave us some questions or send us some questions, some comments, give us some feedback. Let us know if we're helping you in any way, or what we can do to help you in any way. Stefan and I are new to this thing, and we're trying to get everything together. I'm trying to figure out how to be a producer, a photographer, figure out lights. I'm trying to figure it out. But soon we'll have it together and it'll all flow because God told us to do it. So He gonna equip us with what we need to get it done. We thank y'all again for joining us.
Yeah.
We also wanted to give a disclaimer. We are not marriage counselors. We are marriage mentors. We helping, giving advice and our opinions based on our experience. We thank you again for joining us, and we're out.
It's the Boyers Kingdom Marriage Podcast.